American Revolution marked the first time in history that people fought for their independence in the name of law, rights, and popular sovereignty. It was the first modern revolution that was more than just a revolt against the British. The most serious problem was the need for money to support the empire. Acts were passed, such as the Sugar, Stamp, and Townshend, to raise money, but only angered the colonies. The British had many advantages, including an army and navy, along with several loyalists who supported the British Empire. Meanwhile, the colonists were inspired by Thomas Paine's common sense and had excellent leadership by George Washington and the European nations, which contributed to the American victory.
Shays' Rebellion was an armed uprising that took place in Massachusetts by American farmers against state and local enforcement of tax and debt. The cause of the rebellion was to justify and replace the Articles of Confederation. They wanted the Articles replaced because it had no power to regulate commerce or trade between the states. It couldn't force states to obey laws. Each state had its own paper money, and there was only one vote per state, regardless of its size. Although some strengths of the Articles included the Congress having the power to deal with foreign affairs, declare war, and make peace, it allowed the formation of new states. This is why we had to move to the Constitution.
George Washington was unanimously elected the first president of the United States. His runner-up, John Adams, became his vice president. As a former leader of the Continental Army and chairman of the Continental Congress, George Washington possessed the credentials and respect necessary for presidency. Washington chose only to stay in presidency for 2 terms in order to avoid the feeling of monarchy and establish a better democracy. Many colonists believed that Washington would remain president until his death. George Washington played an important part in shaping the role and function as a president, including the establishment of a cabinet of his advisors.
The first presidential cabinet was created by George Washington and consisted of the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, Secretary of War, Henry Knox, and Attorney General Edmund Randolph. Their job was to advise the president, and it was not mandated by either the Constitution or law. The Bill of Rights is the collective name for the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. It was written by James Madison. The Bill of Rights lists specific prohibitions on governmental power. It is considered of what the founders saw of natural rights for individuals to speak and worship freely, and was protected by the First Amendment.
The Jeffersonian Democratic Republic and the Hamiltonian Federalist were the first 2 established political parties. The Jeffersonian Democratic Republic was founded by Thomas Jefferson and mostly favored the poor and uneducated farmers. The Hamiltonian Federalists were founded by Alexander Hamilton and favored the wealthy, educated bankers, manufacturers, and plantation owners. Hamilton and Jefferson often fought over strong central governments and the interpretation of the Constitution. In addition to their disagreements, Hamilton also wanted to establish a national bank and sell its stock to citizens to help investors, while Jefferson did not.
Thomas Jefferson was elected the 3rd president of the United States, demonstrating the first peaceful transfer of power from one political party to another. Jefferson not only drafted the Declaration of Independence, but also served in the Second Continental Congress and was the Secretary of State under George Washington. As president, Jefferson strengthened the American Navy, reduced national debt by 1/3, required the Louisiana Territory, and sent the naval and Marines to suppress piracy against American shipping.
The War of 1812 was a military conflict lasting for 2.5 years between the United States of America and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, its colonies, and its Indian allies. The conflict helped establish the credibility of the United States among other nations. It was the war that ultimately defined James Madison's presidency. The war was caused by British attempts to restrict U.S. trade, the Royal Navy's imprisonment of American seamen, and America's desire to expand its territory. The war included the capture and burning of Washington, D.C., and ended with the ratification of the Treaty of Ghent, but left many unanswered questions.